The YouTube hamster wheel is a real thing. It can be really frustrating trying the same thing over and over and just not getting any traction. So today we're going to help you find your authentic voice and start seeing results.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast presented by vidIQ. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yep, we get it. We are here today to help you change that.
Hello creators, how are you guys? Welcome back to another Video Creators Podcast brought to you by vidIQ like we do every Monday for you. I'm just hanging out with Ingrid and Blake. How's it going, guys?
Hey Sam, it's nice to see you guys.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've been on vacation the last couple of weeks.
Say, how have you been? I feel like I haven't seen you in a year. It feels like
MIA.
I know. It's funny because I keep getting asked, like, what'd you do? Like, it's getting into the holiday season. What'd you do on vacation? And I sat and played video games for about 2 weeks, and it was fantastic. It was so nice. Spider-Man? I didn't play any Spider-Man actually.
What?
I wanted to, but Steph actually bought Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know if either of you have heard of it, but we're obsessed right now. So we played that like the entire time. It was great.
Fun. So, that sounds like my kind of vacation, just truly relaxing. I'm glad you had sounds like a nice relaxing staycation.
Yeah, but I'm ready to get back to it. I'm ready to talk through some strategy with you guys. So it'll be good. So guys, we talk with creators every day. We talk on the podcast every week. And I feel like we've talked a lot about YouTube packaging and sort of how to craft your content the best way to sort of suit YouTube to, ideally be growing your channel. But we don't really talk about formats very often. And Ingrid, you actually brought up this idea yesterday to maybe talk about it on the podcast. And I thought it was a really good topic. And what I mean by format, it's kind of like when you think about Mr. Beast, One Verse a Million, sort of that series, Ryan Trahan, the Penny series, Colin and Samir, sort of that podcast interview style, even like the Hot Ones interviews. It's sort of like they're in their niche and they're talking about a particular topic, but their format is sort of like this unique spin that is authentic to them, and it's sort of different. But I feel like we don't normally talk about this very often. Like, how do you figure out what your format is? Like, what does that look like? So I figured we could sort of have that discussion today and maybe give the listener an idea, or maybe just some tools to put in their tool belt as far as how do I figure that out? Like, what's my format going to be? So maybe just to kick us off, do you guys have this conversation very often with creators?
In working with clients long term, yeah, I have before, because it's kind of like finding your voice on your own channel. Like, you may have a topic or something that you want to talk about, but how do you find that way of doing that or presenting that information or leaning into the entertainment or whatever it is that you're going to do in a way that I guess is going to resonate with an audience? So yeah, I do actually talk about it with clients and experiment in finding that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I had that conversation too often, but I think the first thing for me that comes to mind, especially thinking about the creators you mentioned, was just they were just trying things until they figured out something that really stuck for them. So they really experimented quite a bit. Like Colin and Samir, their creator support, like that episode, like I think they just started trying things, and they started to become prominent branding for them. And now it's a full on, podcast episode just that they do. But that happens just by just trying things too. And like having those buckets of content, I think as well too, where you try different videos as well.
I feel like Ali Abdaal is another good example here too. Just trying different things. Buckets, topic buckets. Really like, what are those different topics that you lean into consistently, like maybe 5 or 7 different things that really is the value that you bring consistently. But that actually gives you an opportunity to really experiment there. I think of some of the clients that I've worked with, and I have this conversation of do we vlog? Do we do explainer videos? Do we, what does that look like, on our channel? And I think once you kind of find something that an audience really resonating with, leaning heavily into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it revolves around the audience and kind of like what's going to serve them well. But I also think as a creator, not being afraid to experiment, I think is really important. Like you guys said, it's because we talk a lot with creators who sort of find themselves in that hamster wheel where maybe they've had one topic bucket for like 10 years. And then they come to us and they're like, I'm so tired of doing the same video over and over and over. And if I do anything different, I just don't really get the same results. And so one of the things that comes to mind for me that I think really helps is like definitely defining a value proposition. I think it's important to lean into some of that language. Yes Theory comes to mind to me for a channel that has a lot of different formats. They do a lot of like, skydiving and like crazy adventure type of videos, but then they'll eat crazy food. And then they'll do these like social experiments where they're talking to strangers and buying an airplane ticket to go with them. And it's a lot of different topics, but they sort of have everything.
Is that a different format though?
The Yes Theory videos?
Yeah. They're different topics, but is it a different format?
That's a good question. How would you differentiate topic from format?
Well, I feel like if I think of Yes Theory, and this is really quick for us, literally having different opinions here, isn't it?
I like this. Yeah. Yeah.
I think of Yes Theory, and it's like, I feel like it's the same kind of format that they follow on their videos versus like I think when I think of format, I think like a vlog is one format of a video. An explainer type of video would be another format. What would be some other ones that you guys can think of?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I when I think of format, I just think of video structure itself,
right?
And how
that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah. So I don't know. When I think of like you mentioned earlier, like Mr. Beast doing the 1 versus 1 million, like that to me, I don't know if it's a format for me. I think it's just a trend he's following for now that he eventually will switch off at some point.
Could you even call that kind of like a listicle too? Because you kind of know what he's doing at the beginning.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
I guess it could be a format then.
Because I think a listicle's a kind of format.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I
that's
think
true.
Too.
Yeah.
Because I was even thinking with like Ryan Trahan, he's kind of strayed away from the penny series, and now he's doing sort of like the rating 1-star hotels or rating 1-star.
Yeah.
I think of that as like a different format, even though the style is kind of similar. Like if you were to if the format being more of a listicle kind of a thing. It's an interesting conversation. Yeah.
You're having us all think differently about formats.
I know. I don't really know where to go from here now.
I think we started off with one thought, and now it's changing.
But it really is though, and so, and then I guess the bigger question to me is, do you really need to have one style or one format for a channel, or can you lean into maybe a couple things really consistently?
I would say that like what you mentioned too, Sam, was like, I feel like it would bottleneck you at some point. I feel like because people do get tired of it, but also I at some point your audience will get tired of it too. I think like as much as Hot Ones is doing well, I'm still wondering at what point will that become less entertaining for people as they see more and more of it. Maybe, I don't know. The conversations help keep it going because it's different conversations all the time. But at some point, I don't know, would they have to change it up at some point? Change up the food they eat? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so that's an interesting example with Hot Ones because it's like their channel is First We Feast. Hot Ones is one of their formats, and they do a lot of other types of videos. And for them,
interesting.
So for me as a viewer, I only watch Hot Ones episodes. I don't watch any other types of videos. And I was kind of leaning into like, I think it's important to have a value proposition because I don't think First We Feast has one. There isn't really a reason for me to watch the other videos or like a through line linking them together. And I guess like a caution for a creator who's going to try a lot of different types of formats. Maybe you have like a long form interview style video format, and then you have like a shorter, more punchy story video or something like that. I think it is really important to have some sort of grounded through line of like, this is what the channel is, or this is sort of the umbrella everything falls under, because then they're not going to be so sparse and have such a divided subscriber sort of community. I think that can be a bit of a danger.
I think it's good to be known for something. Like they're known for Hot Ones, if that's the case too. Like Ryan's known for the Penny series, but that's not the only content they make, because the last thing you want is to chase that what works the entire time to the point where like, especially if you don't you may not want to be known for that too. But I think the fact that they have other types of content rather than just hot ones that they do get, serves their audience in different ways. They don't feel nailed to one thing, but it gives them a good starting place. Like I know Ryan because of the Penny series, but I actually prefer a lot of his newer content sometimes these days too. So he has leaned away from it.
I think of like creators like Thomas Frank, right? He's got a couple channels. His main channel has a couple million subscribers on it, and he's more productivity, and he does a lot of different variety things on there. But then he also has his one super, super niche channel, Thomas Frank Explains, which has, I don't know, 100 and some odd thousand, 180,000 maybe subscribers, because it's just about Notion. And on that channel, it's really kind of like the how-to space. So, how to do formulas in Notion, how to do this in Notion. Some of his videos are really, really long. I would call them full-on tutorials, real-time tutorials, and some are more just showing you the highlights. So, but it's really kind of still the same kind of format that he's leaning into for his channel. And seems to work with his audience there. So how do we help somebody listening? And let's make this practical, because so far it's been a total theoretical conversation. How do we make this practical for the audience listening? And if they're not really sure what their format is, where do you start?
My first suggestion would be, if you're not doing this, go watch a lot of YouTube yourself and go watch a lot of different types of channels, different types of niches. Go find channels that are new that you haven't watched before, and just be super curious as you're watching. Pay attention to your own viewer signals. Did you click in and abandon the video immediately? Did you stay and watch the whole thing? Did you watch 2 in a row or 3 in a row? I'd just be really curious about what compelled you to stay or click in the first place, and just be curious and just kind of take note of like, what are you noticing, even format wise? Like, what was interesting about this sort of perspective on this topic? That would be my sort of starting point to start there.
I think looking at retention graph too, for me, I think I'm looking at that just to see, okay, like, 'cause I did an experiment again when I was active on my channel where I moved the hook. I didn't put it at the very beginning. I tried something different. I started with the how-to immediately into the instructions, and then moved the hook later on, and saw a massive rise in my first 30 seconds. So like, experimenting that way and seeing what works. Because just because we have this video format we talk about all the time of hook, it's like, doesn't mean it's like a set in stone, you have to do it this way. It's like a general guideline that's able to be dissected and moved around based on how your audience responds to. And that's how you develop a format that works for you, right? That's where I would look.
And I think too, something that you just said there that works for you sparked this thought for me. You have to want to film what you're doing too. So there has to be some sort of happy medium between that. I know, like, for my own personal channel, it's in the how-to space. It's an art, shocking. It's an art channel. So it's been really more tutorials over the last decade or so, but I wanted more. So I remember the first time I did a vlog, which would be the opposite of what you would find on a channel like mine. And it felt so scary to do that, because I thought, well, is my audience going to completely hate this? Turned out they didn't. But I also was smart in not making a total 180 and just making it a true vlog. I made it kind of like a vlogging tutorial. A little bit. So kind of finding that balance. And because of that, I didn't have the descending graph. I was able to keep that retention because of that. So also approaching maybe format changes and experiments, maybe a little strategic.
I tried the same thing. I made a vlog-ish video on my channel around tech as well. I was trying to like use my Apple Watch instead of using my iPhone for an entire day. So it was still like a through line of like the value of my channel, but I vlogged the entire time. It was weird. It was awkward, but like I learned a lot in the process. And I didn't just do that from then on out. I just tried the video and see how it performed. I'm like, I'm not against trying this again, but because it was an interesting format to try, it felt more personality based too, rather than my other things as well. I had more opportunity for more story to fit in there as well too. So I think just being, and that's another thing too, is like be okay with, like, I knew like doing this video, it may not perform well. I was really hoping it would, but it may flop, but I don't know until I try it. And that's a new format that's not natural to my audience too as well. So
yeah,
I think that's the important thing too with experiments is not making a total shift, a hard shift in, we've been doing it one way for, years or a year or months. And then all of a sudden we're going to do it a completely different way, many videos in a row. That's a little hard on the audience. Seed it in a little bit. Just so things just aren't so, just not a big jolt for the audience too, being smart about it for sure.
I think it keeps things exciting too. Like if I watch a certain creator and all of a sudden they change the intro a little bit, it's like, oh, this is different. Like it's like you get so used to watching the same thing over that any small difference will re-excite you, even just to re-engage at some point. So
yeah, there's something too when you see a creator like not in their studio anymore. It's like you see them in a different environment, you're kind of re-engaged. Like, oh yeah, like this is a real human. Like they don't just exist inside of their dark,
I think of
well-lit room.
Brownlee. Yeah, Marquez Brownlee always does that. He always switches locations, or he'll be in a hotel doing it, and it just, I don't know why. I just really enjoy those videos because it's like he just doesn't care about the camera quality at that point or the audio. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna report on something, and it's like you're just hanging out with the guy in the room, but it's different, right? So
yeah, well, I think it's important because it sounds like we're sort of, there's like two elements here. It's like if we're going to experiment with formats, we want to experiment with something that the audience is going to like. We want to be audience first and be serving them, but also serving us too. I totally agree, Ingrid. Like you got to enjoy the process. Like you have to enjoy making videos. And so, and I think part of that comes to like what's authentic to you and what do you enjoy doing? If you're not much of a talker, maybe it doesn't really make sense to do like a long vlog style type of format for your videos. Like if you're going to hate it the whole time, your audience is probably going to pick up on that. So is there something you're passionate about? Maybe you love storytelling and you can identify maybe for your niche. Let's just say, for instance, if we're going to make it practical, maybe you want to do a cooking channel because you love cooking. And there's a million other cooking channels, but maybe the format that's going to be unique to you and authentic to you and fun and a kind of a different spin could be like, well, what if we tell stories? What does it look like to have that sort of format integrated in our content strategy? Maybe some more story focused videos for a cooking channel. What does that look like? And then I think finding your voice, that kind of fits too. And then, we're touching on running experiments as well. So like, okay, well, how do we move forward from here and run a good experiment, see how that goes?
I even think of like, go ahead, Ingrid.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll go first. I was going to say, I just briefly, I working with a creator right now too, who does a cooking channel as well. And one new format he's trying is just doing a reaction content. So it's a show with has some food themes to it, but he's reacting to it as opposed to doing what he typically does, which is, the how to make certain things as well too. So, but he's open to the experimentation. It does act as community content in a way as well too. He's in some aspects. So, but that's another format. It shows you that you can find different formats easily within the same niche. But
I'm going to make a push for no matter what format you try, that you somehow are able to work in some form of storytelling for sure. Because I think that is going to help pull a viewer forward, regardless of how you present the content.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think sort of with this note too, like we talk all the time about like video length, and we all get asked every day, like, well, how long should my video be? And I feel like this is actually a really important lens to look through when deciding that, because usually what we say is, how long does the video need to be? And if you don't really have a clear format, that makes it a lot harder if you're just kind of going in blind and you maybe have this like Frankenstein format where it's like half story, half vlog, half listicle, and it's like a whole bunch of different things. You might confuse your audience. It might just be a little unclear, especially lengthwise. Like, how do we package this well? So I feel like getting some like defining this a little bit as far as, well, what formats do we want to experiment with, is probably going to actually help a lot when making some of those decisions. Like, well, how long does the listicle video need to be, or how long does the vlog interview style video need to be? That's going to definitely give you some tracks to run on doing it that way as well.
I think really in the experimentation process, I think I'm going to encourage every single person listening to try something new and try something different. And like you guys said, be okay with it not performing. Don't have the expectations that it's going to be your breakout. If it is, that's great. But, really be more open to how can I tell whatever it is that you want to talk about more authentically, and try to find that, because I feel like a lot of the examples that we even brought up, some of those bigger channels, it was really once they found their YouTube voice, their format voice, I guess, if you will, where a lot of their true personalities really came out. Because I feel like that is when people settled into who they truly were, their real, authentic on-camera voice. So I just encourage you guys to experiment.
Yeah. Maybe a question for both of you. Is there too many formats for a creator? Could they go overboard?
So. I think so. I think when an audience doesn't, it's just my own personal opinion, but I think that when I don't really know what to expect, if I'm a returning viewer and I'm a subscriber, because granted, a lot of times we're crafting for the non-subscriber, but if things are too different all the time, then if I'm coming back, I don't really know what to expect. And I'm not really sure, like you, Sam, you only show up for one format. Right?
It's true.
If there are too many, that's not necessarily a positive signal. Right. If you're only watching one thing. Now, it's a good thing that you come back for that one thing. But if there are too many different formats, I feel like you don't really know what your voice is on your own channel. It's like having too many leaders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That kind of leads me to the question, because I know, Ingrid, you brought up the example of, what was his name? The Notion guy?
Oh, Thomas Frank,
and he had a different channel. Is there a point where if you have too many different formats, like at what point should you just start a new channel or a second channel?
I think if the target audience, if the audience for that particular thing changes, then that might be, and he's actually a really good case in point. So he had a productivity channel, and that doesn't mean that Notion videos don't work on his channel. They absolutely work, but he wanted to really go into talking about Notion, and it was for a specific ideal viewer that's what they want. And that's where he decided to change to a different channel. And that's where he really honed in on Notion content there, because putting too much of that on his channel wouldn't have made sense, because it would have split the audience.
Yeah, it almost could be like if there was a cooking channel that does a lot of particular types of recipes, or maybe like the value is a bit more of like easy recipes. But then they really were passionate about the science of the food and like why. I think of like an Ethan Chablowski type of channel where they go really into the education. Maybe that, because it is for a bit of a different audience, or maybe the value is slightly different. Maybe at that point, that format could be on a second channel, and then we'll keep it a little lighter, more beginner friendly on sort of the original channel. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I have a question then too. Then, so podcasting is a different format. Would you keep that on a different channel or the same channel?
I think that depends. That's a it depends question. I think that if your audience is willing to watch everything, then it belongs on the same channel. But if you're putting a podcast out every other video, and people aren't coming back, they're only watching the shorter ones, then maybe you need to have a podcast only channel.
So to be a test and see before you decide kind of thing.
I think so. I think so. you're not going to break anything. You can always go back and start fresh with new content, and have YouTube really get the right content in front of the right viewer at the right time. But
how would you get your viewer willing to watch everything?
Well, I think having a deep why, having a real crystal clarity around who you're talking to and why, right there would be it. I think of like a channel like Dr. Boz. It's a keto channel, and she's an internal physician, and she does a really great job across multiple formats: live content, discoverable videos, the occasional community video. She's even vlogged before, her shorts as well. And her viewers come back consistently, and consistent growth. And they watch it all. I think there's some metrics on the back end too to also kind of help you understand Are people watching your lives? Are they watching your shorts? Are they watching your videos? Are they watching more than one? Are they watching multiple formats, multiple types of content as well? That can also be very helpful too.
Yeah. I think when we were talking about authenticity, I think it's so important if you were thinking from like a bird's eye view, like long term with the channel. I think it helps so much to enjoy what you're doing and to do a format that you enjoy as a creator, because that's going to bleed through the camera, and people like watching people who are excited about the thing. There's a like a guitar gear reviewer guy that I watch all the time, who he just is like giddy with excitement when he tries something new, and he has pretty long form videos. He probably breaks a lot of rules, quote unquote, that we would probably suggest, but his sort of authenticity is so infectious. It's really easy to just connect with him. Like, I think that is so important when it comes to, should we try a podcast? Should we try, I think of like the Peter McKinnon's, where it's like he could put anything out, and it's like he's so authentic and his audience can connect with him so easily over a long period of time. He can kind of try whatever and people will most likely come back.
He can try it, but his podcast is on a separate channel.
Oh, is it? Interesting. Interesting. If it was on the same channel, do you feel like it would perform better or worse compared to how it's performing like on the other channel?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I even think of like, again, Marquez Brownlee, like his podcast is on a separate channel. I sometimes wish it was all on one page. I could just go find it rather than go to another channel. So I don't know, that's my personal thing too. But and that even comes back to the idea, I know shorts as well too. Like shorts is a different format. I mean, we all keep it on one channel now too, but there are still some creators who do it on a separate, like clips. They do that on clips for like a separate channel as well too. So that's also interesting.
Well, I think of creators like Graham Stephan. He has his regular content that he puts out. He has several different channels. He has one that's more of a vlog, and they're different formats. One's more of a vlog that's on a vlogging channel. One is more the traditional, explainer type video of what's going on in the economy or finance or whatever sector at the time. And that's on the main channel. He has the Iced Coffee Hour, which is his podcasting channel. Now those can go 2 hours long. Very, very different from his regular content. And it has a very different vibe. It's much slower paced. It's a completely different format. I don't think that would work on his main channel, quite honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like frequency of uploads really comes into play too. Because if there's a podcast every week, and then maybe there's just a traditional video every week,
I agree.
It's like that could really clash against each other. So I almost feel like if maybe he did one video a week, but maybe like a podcast episode every month or like every 2 months or something like that, it might be a little easier to have everything on the same channel. Because I guess if we are talking about like when is a good time to try a new format or when maybe isn't a great time to try certain types of formats, I guess what are maybe some of the pitfalls for someone listening if they're going to go experiment? What are some pitfalls they should avoid? I
think outright copying other people, for sure. It's good to kind of use that as inspiration, but really finding your own voice. If you're just outright just copying what somebody else does, it's never going to authentically be you. And if you're using that as a yardstick to measure everything by, then I don't know if that's really helpful. Yeah. Bigger picture.
I tried copying Mr. Beast for a while when I was doing it with tech, and I still to this day regret it. I think it felt so unnatural. Everyone was like, "You're so different on YouTube than you are in person." I'm like, I don't like that. So like I was just trying to be something for the sake of what was working rather than trying to figure out who I was. So like if and when I get back to my channel, it's like I really want to revamp and like just create Blake rather than a Mr. Beast version of Blake. So that is definitely true.
That's interesting. So then how do you start if it feels so foreign?
To be myself on the camera, you mean?
I mean, like starting a different format, right? Because I feel like sometimes copying, it gives you that that opportunity to lean into something that you might not normally do. But then how do you actually, because we're actually saying don't do that, but how do you create that thing that's you without it being a copy of somebody else? How do you use their idea?
I I think it's gonna be a hard habit to break a little bit. I think after a while you build a persona, it's like you feel like you have to act that way. Cause I got so used to doing that persona on camera. I don't know, it's gonna take a bit, but I'm also like in the mindset these days with YouTube, like the idea you can't break it, and like, you know, my channel being where it's at, like I don't really care how things perform. I just want to try things and see what fits me, what feels more natural, and just build from the ground up at this point. So I don't know. I'm like, I mean, the way I talk right now is like how I kind of want to present and just be more. And even when I did that vlog video, like that felt more natural to me. And I think that was the one point where I got to of like, oh, this feels easier and more authentic than the loudness I was trying to portray, which I'm also sick of too. I don't know why I went that route, but
yeah. Vlogging channel incoming from Blake.
Oh no, I'm going to go that far, but yeah, definitely like just those aspects of just, I think the vlogging helped because it forced me to just speak on the spot. So I wasn't trying to speak from a script or anything too often, but it was more natural. So that's where I kind of want to get. So it's like, how do I combine both worlds where, you know, I can find me, and also like, you know, I was creating content that I don't watch too, which doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I was creating fast paced, fast edited, based on what was working, when really like, do I watch a lot of that? Do I enjoy a lot of that? No. I mean, why am I doing that then? Right. So.
And does that even make sense? Because you had a tech channel. So does that even make sense for the tech space?
Yeah. Well, I guess it was with the experiment though at the same time too, because I was like, well, what's different because a lot of them are slower paced and like can be pretty boring to watch as well too. I'm like, well, what would look like to be different. Right. But it also just felt like exhausting to me to try to hold up this persona that wasn't me. And I've seen people on like just creators that I will literally scroll past that I see them even in shorts, because I can tell they're putting on something. You can tell they're not them. And I just don't like it. I'm like, oh, this feels weird. I'm going next because I know what you're trying to do here. So
yeah, I do think it's important as a creator. Like if you're listening, if you find yourself like in Blake's shoes, then definitely it's like, well, let's try something else. Let's try something that's not going to be so forced for us or not authentic. But I think it is important to discern, like, am I feeling that, or am I feeling uncomfortable because this is new and I haven't found my voice yet, and I need to just push through it and like develop the skill? Because I think that's a real thing too that can sort of create paralysis, where you just don't move forward because it's hard and it's uncomfortable, and you need to find your voice, and it just takes some time, like repeating, doing that and getting a little bit better every time. So I do think there's like two different camps. Yeah. If you're in the other camp, keep going. Like you'll do it. There's a reason why people say it's like it takes 100 videos to get to the point where like you found your voice and you're really sort of comfortable. But I think too, if you're aware, like this isn't me, this is not authentic, then there's a million different formats and different ways you could spin it.
I think it's natural to life though too. That's how we develop as people over the years. We try different things in our lives to try to be different things, and that's how we figure out who we actually are. And like there's times where I've tried to be like different people, even as a human, and realize, what am I trying to do? Like I don't even know who I am anymore. Try to be Blake again. Go back to do that, right? So
I try to be like Blake every day.
Yeah, it's not working for you either.
It's not working. That can't be as cool as Blake. So
I think kind of like what I'm hearing is the same thing that I would also tell somebody else is, don't really force a square into a round hole. You know, it's if you're trying, and especially with your audience too, because if your audience isn't resonating with it, no matter how much you like it, that's not helpful long term.
No, I totally agree. There's a channel that I've been working with where they have a nice studio set, and it looks like a podcast. You know, it kind of looks like our setup if we were all kind of at a table together, and it looks like a podcast. But they have really short, kind of punchy episodes that are like 3 to 5 minutes. So they're very short, and it creates sort of just this kind of interesting dynamic where I think the expectation of the viewer is, oh, this is a podcast. Like I'm going to buckle in. It's probably going to be kind of a longer discussion about some of these things, and it's super short, and there's like some dissonance there. So it's interesting. So it kind of creates this opportunity where, you know, for the viewer, they're maybe not super, maybe it feels a bit like, you know, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's a little confusing for the viewer. So that kind of creates an opportunity too of like, okay, well, how do we try a new format from here? Like, what is the audience really looking for, and what's going to make sense for them and their expectation too when they're clicking?
Yeah. I think also at the same time, like as much as I regret kind of making some of that content, I'm also happy I did do it because I learned a lot of things that work well. I learned a lot of things that don't work well. And I kind of like gave it a shot of like, what if I tried it like this? Okay, that doesn't work. I don't like that. Let's move into something different. So at some points, I guess there's going to be a little bit contrast to what you're saying. Like, I think it's okay to try to put a square peg in a round hole because that's where innovation comes from. But if it still doesn't make sense or doesn't work, then let go of it. Don't just keep pushing through it. Where I just kept pushing through for so long to the point where I got burnt out and didn't want to make content anymore.
Yeah, well, that's where like I really would recommend if you're not watching a lot of YouTube to just be a student, like watch a lot of YouTube because like that can really create greatness for your channel. Like if in your niche, there's a total lack of a particular style or particular format, like that can really set you apart from other channels. There's I forget the name of the channel, but their sort of niche is like speed running video games. And so they tried this new format of sort of like interview style, long form stories and interviews about speed running video games. So it almost feels like counterintuitive. You'd expect speedrunning games to be like fast and doing that, but he totally served kind of this hole in his niche, and it was really unique and great. And the videos performed super, super well because he just tried something. So yeah, I agree. I would definitely just try stuff. It does experiment too. Be a student. Yeah,
totally agree. There are some art channels that I love to watch, and part of it is, even though they're doing like watercolor tutorials or whatever it is that they're doing, they're combining it with vlogging and storytelling. And that is just so far removed from the normal art space. I'm not surprised that they're getting hundreds of thousands of subscribers way faster than a normal art channel, because they're leaning into human connection, but yet also serving the thing that the person wants. And so I think that, and also being true to themselves. And I think that whenever you can kind of combine all those things and have that through line between that, and then trying a different format that is maybe a little unexpected, that's sometimes where a lot of the magic can really happen. Right?
Yeah. And you probably have unique skills that are maybe you feel like are completely unrelated. Like a channel, Nerd Forge, sticks out to me, where she does a lot of art, but she's also like a gamer. So she's like transformed some of her most popular videos. She's like transformed her gaming console into these like beautiful like trees and like artwork. And she's sort of combined. It's so authentic to her, but it is also so fresh to that niche that it's, creates this really great format for her. It's really, really bingeable for her audience.
So Sam, if you were to really think about this, make this super, super practical, or even Blake, what's that quick little punch list for somebody who's listening that's like, you know what, this might be something different because I feel like I've been trying to force things. What's the top 3 things for somebody to immediately execute?
What do you actually watch on YouTube as opposed to what you're creating? Compare what you enjoy watching to what the videos you're producing and see how much of a difference there is there. That's the first thing I'd do.
I would add, why should somebody subscribe to your channel? Like, what's your value that you're proposing them? What's your value proposition? And then from Blake's point, how can you combine the two things? So like, what are some of the interesting ways that the creators are watching are like delivering the content? What are some interesting formats? Why are people subscribing to your channel? And then how do you start to experiment with some of those other formats, but like lean into that value?
And are you enjoying it?
I was going to say the exact same thing. Are you having fun? Are you having fun? And if you're not really fully leaning in and having fun, what's it going to take for you to show up on camera and just really look like you are having the best time?
Along the lines of experimenting with different formats, for today's power tip, we're going to be talking about remixes, specifically the new collab feature with Shorts. So really, YouTube's been doing a lot of updates when it comes to shorts, and a lot of them are definitely competing with TikTok, like the dream screen and different things that definitely just allow for some more almost like community style content that you can make to engage with your audience if you're a shorts creator. So one of these new things is collab, and it's basically a side-by-side shot where you can react to a remix that you make on someone else's content. So if you remix somebody's video or their short, you can basically create a side-by-side. It's eligible with long form videos as well as shorts, and you can basically be right next to the video and you can react right next to it. So just kind of another TikTok competitor type of feature that they are integrating into YouTube Shorts, but it does create some cool opportunities for some community content. So you guys have any thoughts? Pretty interesting.
I think in general, what I liked about it with TikTok even still too is like, it only, even what Mr. B said too, because people are taking his content almost like he said, like ripping it off. It also pushes your identity farther too. So although someone's remixing it on their content, it's getting your face out there more and more to the point where like they might recognize that and come back to want to see more of who you are as opposed to maybe that creator. But
definitely
good way, connecting known to unknown. Right?
I was about to say, yeah, it's definitely kind of an easier lift if you can be directly next to the video. So yeah, pretty cool feature.
So for you, if coming up with a new format seems daunting and you don't want to feel alone in that process, we actually would love to partner with you with our one-on-one coaching program where you can work with a coach Monday through Friday to kind of talk through those pain points, those roadblocks you're facing around your format, around anything you're really facing in your channel. And we'd love to work with you along that journey towards your goals. So if that's something you're interesting to you, just go to get.vidiq.com and register there.
Thanks for listening to another Video Creators podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye.